The Locked On Podcast Network presents the NFL Big 3 in 30. The three biggest stories in the NFL from our local experts at the Locked On Podcast Network. We bring you the real story, why it matters, what's next, who wins the big game, and more, all in 30 minutes. The NFL Big 3 in 30 starts now with the biggest story in the NFL.
Back-to-back NFC North champs and 1 seed. Doesn't get any better.
You are Locked On Lions, your daily Detroit Lions podcast.
15-2. 15-2. Think about this for a second, folks. I'm like, oh, let's break it down. We'll break it down. But just stop. Stop wherever. If you're in your car, if you're watching at home, stop and breathe for a second. Let's do a little breathing exercise. 15-2. We may never, ever, ever see this again. The Detroit Lions finished a season with 15 wins. They went from 3 to 9 to 12 to 15. The Lions. We're not talking about the Niners or the Cowboys or the Packers or the Chiefs or any of these proud franchises, Sterling Frazier's, Pittsburgh Steelers. No. The Detroit Lions just won 15 football games in a season. Wow. Just wow. How awesome is that? How awesome was tonight if you were at Ford Field to witness that and to be a part of it? The fans were amazing tonight. It was deafening in there. It was loud, and the defense fed off of it. They did. For anybody that says, well, the Lions right now on the road, they would have been fine going to the Rams next week. Are you kidding me? Do we really want part 3, Lions-Rams, hearing that big mouth Kelly Stafford and her BS for a week? No. I'm good with Minnesota and Rams. Y'all play next Monday night. Enjoy yourselves. Lions need a break. They need rest. And they get 2 playoff games before the Super Bowl at home. Can you imagine what Ford Field is going to sound like for an NFC Championship game? Let's not put the cart before the horse here. But regardless, just awesome. What a job tonight by the Lions. It was not pretty. Second half, the Lions pulled away, but that first half, we had ourselves they had us scratching our heads at 10-6 at the half. Thank you, Will Reichert, by the way, for kicking the football out of bounds on the kickoff with 20 seconds left in the first half. Thank you. What did Bradford Banta say on yesterday's show, in case you missed it? The former Lion, he was great. He said this could come down to special teams, and that was a huge swing. It was 7-6 Lions. And then the Lions got a free 3 points because Will Reichert kicked the ball out of bounds. Lions got 2 plays, went right down the field. Then Jake Bates nailed a 48-yard field goal to put the Lions up 10-6 going in at halftime. Second half, it was the Jahmyr Gibbs show. And we're going to hand out game balls. We're going to talk about the offense. We're going to talk about Gibbs. Injuries, Terrion Arnold in a walking boot right now, not a good sign. The return of Gaines media poster boy, the flowing locks, the blonde bombshell, Alex Anzalone. What a job tonight by him. Man, what a difference he makes on that defense, huh? I predicted 41-37. I thought this was going to be a track meet and a shootout. I would have told you this morning, and by the way, was today the longest day of our lives? Oh my God. It was like 6 o'clock, and I'm like, wait a minute. We got another 2 hours and 20 minutes before this thing kicks off? Oh, mercy. And then it's like 8:20 and 8:23, and then they're going to the Jeff Daniels intro for the 5,000th time. Hey, did you know Jeff Daniels is from Detroit? Oh my God, just kick the ball off, please. I don't want to hear from Jeff Daniels for the 7,000th time. Holy hell. Please just kick it off. We were waiting for this game to start. All right, I might have just lost it there, but bear with me. Anyways, so by the way, what's that stupid show that wins all the awards? My wife was watching the Golden Globes tonight in the other room. Oh God, The Bear. Yeah, the Bear is not a comedy. They're stealing awards from funny people. The show's not a comedy. All right. What was comical tonight was just poor Sam Darnold. Oh, the Lions destroyed that man. Seriously, the Lions tonight attacked Sam Darnold. They attacked him like Jim Harbaugh always says. Attack every day with enthusiasm unknown to mankind. Who's got it better than us? Nobody. They went after Sam Darnold tonight. And Aaron Glenn, if Aaron Glenn is not a head coach next year somewhere, there needs to be an investigation. This was one of the greatest coordinator jobs in football history tonight. Sam Darnold was 18 for 41 for 166 yards and a passer rating of 55.5. That is pathetic. Now, when he had some time, did he miss open receivers? Yes. But that dude was hearing footsteps all night long. All night long. And it was Blitzburg out there. The Lions were sending the house, and they put the faith in their cornerbacks and to play man coverage, and those guys responded. And I hope Terrion Arnold's injury is not serious as we're recording right now, but it looked like that left foot was in a walking boot from what I heard. Hopefully it's not an Achilles or anything like that, please, because he was awesome tonight. But Amik Robertson, man, that dude balled out. He held Justin Jefferson to 3 catches for 54 yards with 8 targets. That's it. You hold Justin Jefferson to 3 catches. That incredible. Absolutely incredible. How many quarterback hits to the Lions? 10 quarterback hits tonight. 10. And I've been on this defense and I've been all over them about got to get pressure. In the front 4, where have you been? Was it Darius Smith? Where have you been? Muhammad, Reeder. Come on, guys. We're Pascal. And they all made plays tonight. They all were in the backfield knocking Sam Darnold down. And look, the Lions caught some breaks tonight. Jared Goff, intentional grounding in the end zone was not called when it was 7-0. That was a big play. There was a helmet to helmet that wasn't called that the Lions got away with. The Lions had caught some breaks. Jefferson's alone in the end zone and Darnold overshoots him. But you know what? You also make your own breaks. The Lions made it so uncomfortable for Darnold tonight that going into the next round against whomever it is, it'll be the lowest seed. It could be Green Bay. It could be Washington. It could be Minnesota again. That's what Dan Campbell said. Dan Campbell told Kevin O'Connell, see you in 2 weeks when they shook hands at the end of the game. It could very well be Minnesota again. But making things difficult for the other team's quarterback, making him uncomfortable, that was job 1 tonight, and the Lions did it. They did a phenomenal job. And Jahmyr Gibbs, 4 touchdowns, 20 touchdowns on the season. 20. Dude is a superstar. Superstar. And remember, there were games this year where he's not even on the field for the first possession, the first drive. It's David Montgomery's show. Man, the Lions have awesome depth, and what a job Brad Holmes did. And I apologize, Brad, for the 510th time when you drafted Jahmyr Gibbs. And I said, what are they taking a running back at 12 for? My bad. My bad, bruh. Sorry. Never again. I'll never doubt you again.
Gametime has a new feature called Gametime Picks that makes getting tickets to your favorite live events even easier. Gametime Picks filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. Curation makes it easier to save more on sports, concerts, comedy, theater, and more near you. You can take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDON for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code Locked On for $20 off. Download Gametime today. What time is it? Gametime.
Jerod Mayo is out after only one season as head coach of the New England Patriots.
You are Locked On Patriots, your daily New England Patriots podcast.
Pats fans, it was an interesting day in Foxborough on Sunday, January 5th, 2025. Rookie quarterback Joe Milton III passed for a touchdown. He ran for another in his NFL debut. But the New England Patriots cost themselves the number one overall pick in the NFL draft with a 23-16 win. That's right, folks. A win in this case was a bad thing. We're going to get into that in just a moment. But a 23-16 win over the AFC East champion Buffalo Bills. The Patriots now finish the season at 4-13, snapping a 6-game skid, but a loss would have guaranteed them the top pick in the 2025 NFL draft. Instead, the Patriots now fall to 4th. And guess what, folks? That's not even the biggest story of the day. Far from it, because today we are going to be talking about the ouster of Jerod Mayo as head coach of the New England Patriots. We're also going to be talking about the Pats' victory. It feels like a defeat for a lot of you out there, and I don't blame you. We're going to talk about what it means for the Patriots this offseason and into their rebuild. And we're also going to break down the in-game action as well, as there were a handful of Patriots that had pretty impressive performances on Sunday. So settle in, Pats fans. You are not going to want to miss a single second of today's show. But we needed not only one, but two level-headed opinions, even-keeled voices. So I didn't waste any time. I went to the bench and I got the biggest bat that I could find. That is my good friend, the resident voice of reason here on Locked On Patriots, columnist extraordinaire at PatsFans.com, as well as being the co-host of another amazing Patriots podcast, Patriots 4th and 2, my good friend Steve Balistreri. Steve, you always say, may you live in interesting times. We are certainly living in interesting times as we record this podcast on Sunday night, Paisan.
Oh, my Lord. Yeah, I mean, what a crazy day. You know, they had one job today. You know, they've been losing consistently all year, and they just had to lose one more, and they turned around, you know, and again, they, like the Bills, they emptied their bench. They played a lot of young guys, and hey, the young guys were hungry. They showed it. And, you know, you have to give a tip of the cap to the Buffalo Bills because they tried really hard not to win this game. And we all know that. You know, you could tell by watching the game that the Bills had no interest whatsoever of winning today. And it was funny because, as you know, I listened to Bob Sosi and Scott Zolak on the radio, and I just mute the sound of the television. And Zoe even said, the Bills are going to go down and score a touchdown here at the end of the game. And then go for two and throw it like 15 rows deep.
Yeah, there's definitely that level of petty that still exists between these two franchises. And I definitely want to circle back to that in just a moment, because everything that happened today on the field, folks, is going to have a ripple effect on the New England Patriots, both in the offseason and in this future rebuild. And Steve, that rebuild got a much anticipated kickstart. In the aftermath of today's game, Robert Kraft issuing a statement saying this was one of the hardest decisions he ever had to make, but the responsibility he has to Patriots fans led him to believe that the best decision for the organization at this time was to let go of head coach Jerod Mayo. How surprised were you by the act itself, first, Steve, and how surprised were you by the timing? I would say the former was less surprising than the latter.
Absolutely. I mean, you know, we talked last week and you know, I said I was kind of 50-50 that I thought they might let him go. And I think winning today was the final nail in the coffin, although I would venture to say their decision was already made, you know, before today's game. And, you know, I think the cat's out of the bag. You know, Mike Vrabel changed his avatar, I guess you could say, you know, today or yesterday. So, which kind of leads me to believe that they've already had conversations with Vrabel. I think it's just a formality at this point. But yeah, the fact that that they fired Mayo only an hour after the game, I think the Crafts, they could sense the fan base turning not only against Mayo and the team, but against them personally. We've been hearing and seeing a lot of different things on social media with the fan base, and they're lambasting the Crafts as well. And we kind of sensed that big changes were going to happen. I was still kind of teetering that they might decide to keep him for a second year because, let's face it, I mean, he proved he wasn't ready for the job. I think we were all in agreement for that. But, with all new coordinators, he's a new head coach. And with the roster that he was saddled with, I kind of would be able to understand if the Crafts decided to give him one more shot. But I think that ship sailed a couple of weeks ago, and I think it started with Arizona, and then last week with the Chargers. That was, even at that point, I was like, man, I think this ship is getting ready to sink.
Absolutely. If anybody wants to talk about the tide turning with this fan base, ask anyone who was at Sunday's game. Take a look at the parking lot. Take a look at the sparse seats that were still available at kickoff, during kickoff, and throughout the game. It was a predominantly pro-Bills crowd there. Buffalo traveled well. They outnumbered Patriots fans. Since when does that ever happen in Foxborough? And look, you could see the erosion of enthusiasm and even the erosion in trust in this team from the members of its fan base. Now, that leads me nicely into my next question for you, my friend, because you and I are both doing our best speculation at this point. I want to be very clear on that, folks. Neither Steve nor I are reporting on any inside information that lead us to believe this is the move. This is our opinion, but it's looking very likely that Mike Vrabel is going to be the choice here. Is this the right move for the Patriots? Because some might tell you that a proper search was not conducted the last time. That if the Patriots don't conduct a proper search this time, they're doing themselves a disservice, maybe keeping themselves out of the running for guys like maybe even Liam Cohen or Ben Johnson, the offensive coordinators of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers and the Detroit Lions, respectively. So, Steve, in that regard, if the Patriots have made up their mind, if the Crafts have zeroed in on Mike Vrabel, is this the right choice, or really should they be doing a better job of vetting all their options at this point?
Well, I think, I think Johnson would be the best choice for any team at this point, because he brings so much to the offensive side of the ball. But I think he's going to have his choice of jobs, and he's probably going to look for a team that's a lot closer, to building something than the Patriots are. I mean, they're basically stripping it down to the to the floorboards here. But Vrabel makes so much sense for the Patriots. He played here. He was a tremendous football player for the Patriots. I remember he wasn't even a full-time guy with the Steelers.
Right.
And then, he was so smart. He was so versatile. He caught 11 touchdown passes from Tom Brady. And, besides being a great outside linebacker, Bill Belichick always talked about how smart a player Vrabel was. And we saw that in the coaching, once he became a head coach. But you look at that Tennessee team, I think you have to say that Tennessee, those Tennessee teams that he coached, I think they were all overachievers because they never had a very good roster. They never had what we call a franchise quarterback, but he got them to a, AFC championship game. And then it started to take a toll with the injuries the last 2 years, and that's why they let him go. But a lot of that, the reason they let him go was a lot of politics. And I know that the ownership in Tennessee was livid at him when they were on a bye and he came back here to go into the Patriots, Team Hall of Fame.
Right.
And some of the comments he made were not looked upon very nicely by the ownership there. But I think he's kind of that nice mix between an authoritarian coach and a player's coach. He cuts them no slack. He calls them out when they screw up, but he's also one of those guys that, if you read that story on The Athletic this last week, about how the culture he built, that's the kind of culture the Patriots need to get back, and
right on the money.
I think there's no better person right now, that they could bring on other than him.
From big upsets to game-winning drives, the NFL playoffs are better with FanDuel, because right now new customers can bet $5 and get $200 in bonus bets, win or lose. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. Looking at the wild card round, the Pittsburgh Steelers are big underdogs to the Baltimore Ravens. The Steelers have limped into the playoffs, and many are wondering how quickly they'll get bounced. FanDuel thinks it'll be fast. They have the Ravens favored by 8.5. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today and get started with $200 in bonus bets. That's FanDuel.com. Make this playoff season unforgettable with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL.
You are Locked On Dolphins, your daily Miami Dolphins podcast.
The Tyreek Hill comments after the game, and he thanked Dolphins Nation, Fin Nation. Blessing y'all, open doors for the Hill family forever, nothing but respect and love. But effectively told a number of local media after the game that Tyreek was opening his doors to any opportunities that are best for him, and certainly sounded like effectively saying that his time in Miami is probably come and gone. And I don't think it's a secret when you watch Tyreek Hill and you go back and watch game tape from earlier in the season and how Tyreek Hill played in some of those instances and opportunities, that Tyreek Hill was not playing to the standard of which you would expect and hold the highest non-paid quarterback on your team, right? And Tyreek made the point to get a reworked contract before the season in order to get his pay realigned with some of his contemporaries after a new wave of wide receiver top of market contracts. And Tyreek fails to finish with over 1,000 yards on the season. He has the drops against San Francisco and talks about how he's not practicing enough. And then he practices really hard and he has a really productive day against the Browns. Then he plays in this game with 2 catches for 20 yards and effectively removes himself from the game 2 snaps into the second half, never to be seen again because the score in Denver, or with Denver and Kansas City, was out of hand. And because he'd been going through some things this season with the wrist injury. People have asked me, and I have heard things going back to September during the IR stint with Tua about Tyreek and where he was at, and the temperature check for him and where he was at as obviously a critical piece of the team this year, and never really got the warm and fuzzies about it. And then he says the quiet part out loud, talking about not practicing enough. And if you go to training camp, and if you've been to public training camp in either the last 2 seasons, what you quickly find out is Tyreek kind of comes out on his own independently. Most of the time, he doesn't come out with the rest of the team. So sets his own schedule. And this is one of the things where people have asked me, as I was talking to Tyler DeSena at the end of last week about potentially moving on from Tyreek Hill this offseason. And that was before Tyreek Hill effectively came out and said that he wants out. And people have asked me, how does that make the roster better? And from a talent perspective, it doesn't. But I do think this team embraced a more balanced offensive approach this year, even if the way in which they did so was effectively playing at times with one hand and sometimes two hands tied behind their back because of the ideology that they applied in constructing the roster and the decisions that they made and the buttons that they tried to push. And then how they realized once they were into the season, oh, we kind of have to play this way to work around that. And it was not very pretty. And it became very apparent watching the same handful of screen variations, and you get in the red zone and you take a loss on first down, and now you're outside the 5-yard line. And we don't try anything else other than just a handful of angle and perimeter tight end screens in the red zone trying to score a touchdown when we're up in the game. So when you're handcuffed to that regard, in many ways by fault of your own, some for player availability, some for the ideology those who put together this year's team embraced and effectively doubled down on this season versus last. There's only so much you can do to play effectively, right? And that meant more touches for the backs. It meant more touches for Jonnu Smith, who was an excellent player this year for the team and was a successful addition to the roster. But that ate into the number one overall player in the NFL as voted by his peers, who had been on this pursuit of 2,000 yards. And when that happened, and then the wins stopped coming to the degree in which they did, and I think if you studied closely Tyreek and the way in which he played and his mannerisms throughout the course of the season, it kind of became apparent that this year weighed on Tyreek Hill. That would not be a surprise if you watched it unfold in real time. So I am frankly not surprised at all that Tyreek Hill had these comments. And am I maybe a little bit surprised that he had them to say immediately after the game? Yes, but then again, he also took himself out of the game after the first 2 reps of the second half in a game that was a 1-score game into the final 5 minutes of the fourth quarter. If you're going to do that, he got his cash raised for this year. He got his cute little number one overall player trophy. And then the targets and the race for 2K stopped coming, and Tua got hurt, and this is where you're at a couple months later. And I think it's important to remember the Dolphins did not extend Tyreek Hill. They moved cash from the end of his contract into the current year and guaranteed money from 2020 or for 2025. Tyreek Hill's decided that he's done with the Dolphins. And frankly, if I was the coach of the team, and my star player removed himself because they were unofficially eliminated from the playoffs because of the score of another game, I'd probably be done with him too. Tyreek will have some kind of market. It's not going to be the robust kind of market that you're going to be really excited about, but he will have some kind of market. Stephon Diggs was extremely disgruntled and had multiple years of money and guaranteed dollars left on his contract, and he got traded for a future 2. He got traded for a 2025 2 for the Texans, and they tore up the rest of that contract. Well, effectively, anybody that would be trading for Tyreek Hill is looking at 1 year of guaranteed money, and then a big bloated salary in the back end of that's probably not going to be lived up to. So it's probably going to be a 1-year rental. So you're probably looking at some kind of a day 2 asset for Tyreek Hill. And Stephon Diggs was the same age when he was traded as what Tyreek Hill will be traded, assuming he is traded this offseason. And that's kind of, like McDaniel said, I'm not going to fight emotion with emotion, and emotions are kind of high. But I think you look at the full body of work this year, and even if from a talent perspective, it makes your wide receiver room less. Jalen Waddle, I think, would be much more impactful and would not be so ambiguous or murky of a talent if he was the one. Malik Washington's been lovely. There's everybody wants size in this wide receiver room, so I think there's some opportunity to add a player of that regard to the wide receiver room to kind of complement it a little bit more. And you could continue to be balanced and sharing the ball between the wide receivers and the tight ends and the running back, and not feel obligated to have 50% of your passing yards and 45% of your first reads and your progressions on all your passing plays going through a single player. In case in point, to go back to that team in Western New York that the Dolphins are looking up at again this year in the offseason, their mantra this year after they traded Stephon Diggs was everybody eats. And they were very balanced. And guess what? When you're very well balanced and it becomes not who do I need to get the ball to, and instead, how do we remain or how do we take the proper read and find the proper player and get him the football? Suddenly, there's another efficiency that comes with that style of play. And I'm not justifying like not having top end talent for your roster. You need top end talent because Jimmy's and Joe's trump X's and O's more often than not. And I think this year's Dolphins team is a nice embodiment of that because they tried to say, well, it doesn't really matter who's playing at this spot or this spot. We'll just call the right plays with the right motions attached and push the right buttons, and we'll coach our way around all the scheme or talent deficiencies that this roster has. Doesn't work like that. So there's pros and cons to this development for Miami. But for a player whose value is only going to be even as high as it is now, and it's not as high as what it was when you acquired Tyreek Hill. And I think Tyreek was a necessary talent to kind of jumpstart the scheme and jumpstart the development of Tua Tagovailoa. And Tua's got his own questions, but he's certainly matured in the 3 years that he's been here under Mike McDaniel with Tyreek Hill. It goes back to the saying, people come into your life for a reason or a season, right? And Tyreek Hill came into the Dolphins' lives for 3 seasons to be exactly, but like the metaphor is a season of like the calendar year, right? It's not for forever. And sometimes when that happens, then there's no longer a mutual need for one another. And if you told me that's the place that we've reached with Tyreek Hill, after all of the off-season headlines, after some frustrating play this year, after availability and removing yourself from a game, and then saying what was said after the game, I wouldn't take any exception with that either. And the only thing that I wish is that Mike McDaniel would have stood up for the rest of the guys in that locker room that didn't quit on playing the second half of that game because Denver was up big on Kansas City. Because reminder, 10 has a C on his chest. And that wouldn't fly with me if I was the head coach of that football team.